Welcome to the summit, Know Yourself Simply as This. And I have the pleasure to introduce you to Imogen Weber. Welcome.
Thank you, Susan.
And you are in Wales and you're all about the truth and knowing yourself as the simplicity, which is truth. It is very simple and it seems like we make it complicated. But yeah, can you speak about knowing yourself? What does that mean?
To me, to know yourself is to get beyond the ideas of who we think we are, the conditioned viewpoint of who we are, and is actually to come back to the very simplicity of this moment and discover that which doesn't change in this moment, discover that which is always present in this moment, and simply that we miss it because we're looking out towards the content of life, our conditioned idea of life. And so we lose touch with who and what we are at the heart of all this.
Yeah. And so it's like we get lost in the world in a way, and then we lose touch with ourselves, like the bigger portion of ourselves or the wholeness of ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. We fail to see that actually we are the substrate in which all of life comes forth from. And we're looking at all the content of life, but we miss the fact that we are at the heart of it all. And so this brings about a lot of suffering because we misunderstand who and what we are.
Yeah. And in a way it's a little folly that we misunderstand who we are, because you would think, oh, this is who I am, and we would just know it. Why do we misunderstand it? And isn't that strange in a way?
It's very strange. I think it's due to taking on a lot of conditioned ideas about who and what we are. And so in some ways we have to uncover that. And that is a very simple process, but it's actually not a very easy process because those ideas are very sticky.
Yeah. So it's kind of letting go of those ideas, but in a way, can you just let go of those? Because yeah, how do we let go of those? And is there something to do? Because oftentimes I'm told there's nothing you can do. You can just be. And that's also easier said than done.
It is. And for me, it's a both and situation. The ultimate seeing is there is no one doing it, and therefore there is no doing. So it is a being. But while there is a misunderstanding of who and what you are, you feel like a doer. You feel like you need to do something. And so this is how it becomes a both and. You see that you have to see through these ideas, which is why it's very sticky and very hard to. The first doing for me is the seeing through our assumptions and our ideas of who and what we are. So that's where I start with all of this. Is it feels like a doing, but the seeing through it actually dissolves the doer, and therefore it just becomes a happening or a being then.
Yeah. And then that kind of becomes your natural state where you just living life, and you completely look through the ego, like you just look through it automatically, so it
Yeah.
doesn't have any stickiness to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that think you have to get rid of the ego, but for me, the ego is just another natural arising in the content of life. We don't need to get through it. We just need to see it. We need to see it as such. We need to see it as an arising within us. And when we see that, it actually doesn't hold the stickiness and the belief and the identity as ourselves anymore. And so then it doesn't cause us the same sufferings and problems that we feel when we believe we are just the ego.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And then it's you're kind of free of that ego. Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't have to get rid of it, and that's the beauty of it. So to me, true freedom is to include it all, but just to see it all in its own rightful place. So it's seeing the bigger picture of it all, and where it is within us.
Yeah, yeah, because we also do need the ego to function in the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. In the same way we need the body to function. It's not to deny any of these functionings. It's to actually include them, but to see that we are much more than that actually as well.
Yeah. And so that's also, it's an experience, I guess, that you have of this awareness and being like aware of your own awareness. You're aware of your ego, you're aware of the world, you're aware. It's like it encompasses all of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so somewhere it's all about an experience you have minute by minute, isn't it?
I would say it's about a recognition rather than an experience. It's the seeing, it's the aha, it's the clear recognition of how life is moving and working through you, you as awareness, you, rather than you as just the ego or just the body, these things. And so I wouldn't say it's an experience. I would say that that recognition is experienced through the mind body. But it is a recognition that is prior to the mind body. So in that way, it's not really an experience in the traditional sense of how we think of experiences.
Yeah. So it's more like an awareness. I guess that is a good word, or presence, like that is always just there. And in a way, you could say this body mind gets to experience that awareness as the body mind.
Exactly. We wouldn't be able to taste life without this body mind, and so it's a beautiful part of life. It's a beautiful way of consciousness knowing itself, as awareness knowing itself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in a way this body is a vessel for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the awareness, what is that then? Like it's not graspable. You can't grasp it or anything.
No, people have been trying to describe this and point to this. Actually, even using the word awareness is almost too much, because as soon as we form it into words, that's an object. It has a definition. It has a beginning and an end to it. And actually, even the word awareness has a beginning and an end to it, has an idea around it. So what is being pointed to is actually prior to that, before that. So it gets really tricky using words. We have to use them very, very lightly, and see what they are pointing to, rather than any sort of attachment to the words in themselves. But yeah, to sort of clarify that, it's really that principle that is prior to all forms. So that formlessness that is prior to all forms, that formlessness, that self that knows all forms. So that's kind of why I use the word awareness most, because it points to something beyond form. It points to awareness of form, actually.
Yeah. And it's also one of the same, right? Non-dual, because it's like, then again with words, it's like, okay, it's the awareness, it's the formness and the form, but it's one and the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the form is appearing within the formless, just in the same way. And this analogy has been used a million times over. In the same way, the waves are the form of the ocean, but they are not separate from the ocean. They are still part of the ocean. So it's just the recognition of the two sides of the same coin, as the formless appearing within the form appearing within the formless. So it's not separate, but it's one has a motion to it, has an object to it, has a ability to describe it, and one is actually from where all of that comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when we live our lives. It's we are that formlessness in form, and it's like we are it. There's nothing
Mhm.
to seek for because we are already it. There's nothing to find, right?
No. And yet we go all around the houses trying to find and discover that. And when we do discover it, when we do recognize that, it's almost a sort of this joke that comes up of like, really, I've gone on all this journey to actually discover that which I always was. But I had to go on that journey to see that which was always here. So it's a tricky one, because in a way there is a journey that we go on, but in another way there is no journey. There is nothing to find other than that what you already are. So it's really an uncovering of what you are, and that's the journey, the journeyless journey, if we could say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Isn't that amazing? That and but a lot of people may not even start the journey either. You know, there are seekers and non-seekers, you could say, but then maybe the ones that are not seeking on a spiritual journey, let's say they're not seeking for enlightenment or awakening, they're not even interested in that at all. And but then maybe they're seeking something else in life, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So there's always some kind of seeking as a human being somehow.
Yeah, I actually, for me, I don't make too much distinction between seeking of the non-spiritual kind and seeking of the spiritual kind, because actually I think it's the same thing. It's just the spiritual search is an intensification and a clearer direction of where you need to look. Because I feel like all seeking is ultimately seeking to discover the self, to come into the recognition of the union of that self. So we can seek for that in cars and things, but it's more of an outward search. And actually the spiritual search is just recognizing that the attention needs to come inwards to discover who and what you are and who and what life is. So that's the difference that I see, but ultimately they're still seeking for the same thing, which is to know yourself.
Yeah, so it's almost like something instinctively in us that seeks for ourselves, to know that for ourselves. But then
Yeah.
again, what is there to know? Because it's not, you can't know it. That's the thing, right? You can't know it in the way that we think of knowing. It's like the mind thinks, oh yeah, I can know this. And then that's a seeking.
Yeah, for me, you're speaking of the difference between knowledge and knowingness. It's not a certainty of knowingness, it's a recognition of something that is beyond words, but yet it is still a knowingness. It is a sense of who you are, but you can't put that into words. And so it's very difficult to articulate it. Because again, words are the focus of the object. We're talking about the subject here. We're talking about that which is prior to any object. So there is a level of knowingness that can come about, but it's not on the level of knowledge. It's not on the level of intellect. So it's more of a beingness rather than an object-based knowledge.
Yeah. So we might as well forget about trying to know it or understand it with our minds in the first place. And if we have been trying to do that for years, we can just say, okay, forget about it. My mind will never get it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that speaks of surrender to the present moment. And when you're able to do that, you're able to rest in your own self, in your own beingness. But we can also use the mind to get to that place. We can use the intellect to uproot the intellect, to uproot those things that are maybe stopping us from surrendering to the moment, those things that are saying our conditioned ideas of, I need to look out there. And those are very pernicious ideas. And actually, that's why it's very hard to just surrender into this moment, to drop all ideas of seeking, because we still have some attachment to some particular beliefs and ideas of what it is we're seeking. And the simplicity of being in this moment if you have an idea that that's not it, then it's very difficult to just accept on an intellectual level. And then it goes into the experiential level that, oh, I just need to give up my seeking, my looking out there. It's actually not as easy as that, because the mind is involved. If the mind wasn't involved, then we'd be having a different conversation probably.
Yeah. Yeah, the mind is very powerful. It's like you have to convince the mind. Something about the mind has to be convinced about, okay, I'm not in charge here.
Yeah, you have to go through the mind and beyond the mind, though. And that's when the mind sees actually that it's a drop in the ocean, rather than thinking that it is the ocean. So that's why I don't discount using the mind. I think at a certain point, you have to go beyond it, though. You have to transcend it. But you also, in that process, have to include it. Because otherwise, you're creating a subtle separation there. You're creating a subtle duality that says, oh, but not that. And actually, it's the inclusion of everything. And it's the transcendence of all of that, whilst you include all of it within yourself.
Yeah. It's inclusive, that unconditional awareness. Yeah. And so it also includes all the emotions, all the traumas, all the dreams we have. Does it? I guess.
Yeah. For me, all of that is arising within awareness. Once you know yourself as awareness, as that awareness which includes all of that, all of this is included. And actually, you recognize that it always was, but we have an idea that it shouldn't be. And so it's really, for me, about dissolving the stickiness and the sticky beliefs in our ideas of who and what we are, and coming to see that actually that awareness that we are at the heart of all our experience gives rise to all of these experiences, but they are temporary experiences within ourselves, within the boundless open awareness that we are.
Yeah, so just temporary experiences, yeah. But there's always something in us since we were born that just always seemed to be here with whatever was going on. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's to recognize that, it's to see that, it's to see it clearly and recognize, because we assume that the thing that has been here all along is a thing, and we're able to grasp it with our minds, but actually this is why the words fail, because the who and what we are that has been here throughout time isn't an object. It's just it's that which knows everything, that which experiences everything. And you can't grasp it with the mind. As much as you want to, you can't, but the mind will still try to, because that is the job of the mind, to try and define, to understand. So as long as we understand this, then the mind can have its role and can have its place in life. It becomes a beautiful tool, actually.
Yeah. And it sounds like, okay, so we're talking about the mind here, and then there's the heart. A lot of people talk about the heart and the heart opening and opening more and more. So what is that?
Well, I think people have, the English language is a tricky one, because we have singular words that talk of many things. I mean, when we talk of the heart, we can talk about the literal beating, pumping, physical heart. And then we can talk more to the emotional heart. But I think in spirituality, people are talking about the spiritual heart, which is like you think of an artichoke heart, the heart of something, the ground of something, the center of something. And so it does have a correlation with the physicality, with the mind, with the body. But it's really the recognition of the heart of life and the opening to the heart of life, the opening to our nature. And with that comes certain fragrances, that sense of openness, that sense of joy, that sense of peace. But I would say the first and foremost, the thing is the recognition of your nature, and that opens the heart.
Yeah, so first things first kind of thing. Yeah, because we can also purify, we can do all kind of things. I know you spent a lot of time meditating since you were 6, right? And so your own journey, what did that reveal for you? Like, was it necessary with all this meditation? We often told, yeah, you need to sit and meditate, and we are told all kind of things of what we need to do to know our true nature, mantras or prayers, and there's so many things. Maybe energy transmission. I know you do some energy transmission too, and you also had some experiences of that. But what does that mean?
You see, I have a different view of this whole thing. I don't know. For me, I see all of it as symptoms of awakening. So it comes, for me, rather than I need to do this and I've got to get on the right path and I've got to meditate and I have it, for me, the inspiration to even pick up a book or to sit your butt down on a cushion and close your eyes is an inspiration of life wanting to know itself further. And so that's why I see these all as a symptom of awakening rather than a cause of awakening. Because when you see yourself as the non-doer of life, when you see yourself as awareness and doing happens within that, you then start to understand that actually I never was doing this. And that tendency towards spirituality, towards a spiritual practice, was not something that I made appear within me and I could do right or do wrong. It's something that happened within me and to me. And so I feel that we can't ever go wrong with life, even if we seemingly fall off our path and go in a direction which seems not to be the right direction with regards to everyone else. It is still the right thing for us. It's still the way that life is experiencing itself and getting to know itself through the wisdom of experience.
So everybody's journey is individual, you could say. It's like, it could be this, it could be that. And
yeah,
all the time, there is no journey at all, actually, but in a way,
exactly.
there's a journey from the mind's perspective.
Yeah, well, on the relative level of life, on the human form, human body level of life, doing happens, things happen, time happens, all nested within the recognition of none of this is being done, none of this is happening, there is no time and space. So it's both, it becomes both and, one appearing within another, the deeper truth being that there's nothing to do, and yet on the surface level, doing sure does happen. And so, yeah, I don't think there is any way that we can be wrong with life, but there are some similarities of paths. There are some ways in which, seem to work for more or less people. But to me, it is all a way that of pointing ourselves back to ourselves. This is what meditation does. This is what energy transmissions do. This is what self-inquiry does. This is what techniques and mantras and all the rest of it, if they're doing their job, let's say, they're pointing us back to the simplicity of ourselves.
Yeah. And just living life, it could also be doing the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I see everything as a mirror for that. Everything, every interaction, every experience as a mirror pointing back to ourselves, to know ourselves. And so for me, I don't discount anything as an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for wisdom, an opportunity to taste life further.
It's all this and whatever is happening, and we're having our journeys in life, but is there any purpose, any meaning with anything, or is it just like, okay, I'll just live life how I feel like it, or is there actually some purpose for us humans?
When we start to listen to life, then we we hear what is the purpose of life. We hear what is the movement, and that can be from a minute moment to moment picking up a cup to a larger sort of broader view of of what a purpose of life is. I don't think that we have to come in with any sort of idea about purpose. I think purpose is what happens to us, how life moves through us. And that in itself is a purpose, and yet it's also a complete non-purpose in that way. It's not a purpose in the traditional sense of deciding how we should what we should achieve in life. It's more of a movement of life that we recognize, a current, a flow, an under current of life that moves through us.
Wow, yeah, that totally makes sense. And in that way, it's like, it's right here and right now as it happens, as this right now, as this. And yeah.
Yeah, and this is plentiful purpose. It's just when the mind gets involved and says, "Oh no, this isn't the right purpose. This isn't a big enough purpose. We need a different kind of purpose." This is when we get into trouble, because actually, I feel like every moment of every day has both purpose and no purpose to it. The living is the purpose, but not our idea of what we should be living.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds very beautiful. And so you do some divine light energy transmissions. And so what's that about? Because I also hear a lot about that. And then I'm like, wait, if I'm already the light in myself, this, I don't need light from somebody else. So.
No, you don't. And that's actually not what's happening. The way I see it is we are all that light, but it's almost like we have cloaks or layers or veils covering that, and we don't yet see it for ourselves. So really it's the uncovering of that to reveal it within ourselves. And I find the transmissions is helpful when it's almost like, you know, a tuning fork, when it pings the note C, and then you're able to tune into that and sing that C note yourself. It's a bit like that. It's a bit like being able to recognize something in yourself that you maybe have just missed, and it is always there. It is always at the heart of your experience, but sometimes we need a hand or some breadcrumbs in order to be able to see that for ourselves, and really just to remove the doubt that we're not that.
Yeah, so it's like you get a little help from your friends, so kind of, you know?
Yeah, it's revealing your own nature to yourself, and this is just a way of helping that along. But I'm not giving anything to anyone, because actually even that idea would suggest an inherent duality in life, and that's not my experience of life. And so even the apparent giving of a transmission is all happening within awareness, to awareness, as awareness.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. I just got a transmission, this interview, right? You could say. Or we gave each other a transmission.
Yes, absolutely. This is the nature of being human, is we experience life and we transmit life through our embodiment. We can't help it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, so can people reach you somehow on your website? What's your website?
My website is beyondimogen.com, and yeah, I have lots of retreats and events, various things that people can turn to, and I also do one-on-one sessions there.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Imogen. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. It's really lovely to talk to you today.